This is Thames from London. Don't forget, the weather outlook follows the world news now from ITN at 5 o'clock.
The news from ITN.
Soviet rebel Boris Yeltsin wins 89% of Moscow vote. 500 women and children held hostage in Guatemala prison. Doctor takes authority to court for working too many hours. And personal mission accomplished, the man who built his own cathedral. Good afternoon. Boris Yeltsin, the man sacked by Mr. Gorbachev 2 years ago and disgraced by the Communist Party, says his stunning victory in the Soviet general election is a mandate for speeding up the pace of reform. It's been officially confirmed that Yeltsin took almost 90% of the vote in the key Moscow constituency. And in the Soviet Baltic states, nationalist groups have also made a strong showing against the official Communist Party candidates. The Soviet leader, Mr. Gorbachev, said the country has spoken, even if he said not everyone is pleased with the outcome.
All day, Boris Yeltsin's votes were piling up at the election counting stations. Few went to his hardline opponent. Tonight, the election chairman announced Yeltsin had taken Moscow with almost 90% of the votes. Yeltsin's campaign staff celebrated. Boris Yeltsin's victory in the all-Moscow seat was as massive as the polls had predicted. Given a choice at the voting stations, Muscovites had defied the party line and voted for his style of communism. Shut out of the party hierarchy, Yeltsin had fought off attempts to discredit him and won public backing. Boris Yeltsin's drive from political disgrace to election triumph has caught the public imagination.
I think that he is a political leader.
The only person who would be able to change our life in general.
And in the Baltics, the Soviet Communist Party took a battering at the hands of pro-independence movements, like here in Lithuania, where non-communist candidates took 2/3 of the seats. And in Estonia, where the Popular Front movement's leader, Edgar Savisaar, and its co-founder, Mario Lauriston, both defeated communists. They'll now sit in the new Moscow Assembly, arguing against Kremlin rule. And more opposition argument will come from the triumphant Boris Yeltsin. By giving his country a taste of democracy, Mr. Gorbachev has unleashed a political whirlwind. The Communist Party is still firmly in control, but the opposition now has a voice, both in and outside the party. Ian Glover-James, ITN, Moscow.
More than 500 women and children are being held hostage in a prison in Guatemala after a riot by inmates. 10 people were killed as armed inmates took over El Pavon jail outside the capital, Guatemala City. Malcolm Monroe in London reports.
0. Rochdale 0, Carlisle 0, Stockport versus Torquay and Tranmere versus Leyton Orient, also evening kickoffs. Wrexham 4, Burnley 2, and finally York 0, Scarborough 0.
And finally, a Spanish priest's remarkable personal mission is nearing completion. More than a quarter of a century ago, Justo Gallego Aden began his life's vocation to build a cathedral with his own hands. He's been paid nothing for his labours, and all his materials have been gifts.
Friar Just woke up one morning and decided to do something for God. Released from his monastery, recovering from tuberculosis, he wanted to do something big. His brother had a field of wheat. Friar Just vowed to turn the harvest into a prayer made of stone. Today, a quarter of a century later, his vision is almost complete. He begged, he borrowed to build single-handedly in a village on the outskirts of Madrid, this cathedral. Friar Just has climbed above such little matters as planning permission. The local town hall has decided to turn a blind eye. The designs are in his head, not on paper. He said he got ideas by looking at other churches in Madrid and watching American television series. The local parish priest, alarmed at the competition, took the problem to his bishop. The bishop in reply said, "I've got enough problems without worrying about this."
And that's all the early news in ITN. We're back again tonight at 10:15.
rain. Well, I hope you had a good Easter and I hope you enjoyed the warmer weather, because tomorrow it's not only going to be cooler, but it's going to be a lot wetter as well. But first of all, tonight, that band of rain I was talking about earlier, working its way down the country from the northwest to the southeast, is still with us. By about 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, I imagine it'll be stretching from about Norfolk down to, or I should say, West Sussex. Now, ahead of that, it's going to be clear first thing, with a little bit of fog and mist around the East Anglian coast and also up the Thames estuary. Behind the belt of rain up in the northwest of England and in Scotland, it's going to be much clearer. So up in that part of the world, look out for frosts tonight. Now, on to tomorrow morning. That rain's still going to be lingering on in the extreme southeast. It will clear away from there during the course of the morning. Now, behind that, there's another belt, a much clearer, brighter belt of weather from the southwest up to the northeast of England. And beyond that, up in the north of Scotland and Northern Ireland, showery weather, but certainly not as rainy as today. Now then, let's take a look over the next 4 days so that you know what's in store for you this working week. First of all, the southern half of the United Kingdom. Well, it's an unsettled outlook. Many parts will stay dry most of the time, but it's going to be cooler and fresher, and tomorrow much wetter too. Temperatures are gradually picking up towards the end of the week. Now, in the northern half of the United Kingdom, a similar story, but it's going to be much wetter and certainly much windier as well. Temperatures take a dive on Tuesday, but like the south, they're going to pick up towards the end of the week. The winds are quite fresh, making it feel cooler, with the possibility of gales in exposed areas. Those sheltered regions could be warmer with the occasional cloud break, but on the whole, a wet week. Although if it is any consolation, tomorrow it's going to be wetter in the south and a little brighter up there in the north. Here's the summary.